In this video, we're going to look at 10 ways you can use maze games in your Spanish classes. Hey, it's Ashley, aka Senorita Spanish, where I provide easy-to-use resources to save you time and energy while you're lesson planning. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're not new here, welcome back. Make sure you click that subscribe button and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content I create for you in the future. Also, links to everything that I mentioned in this video will be in the description box below. Sometimes you just need a change. The very same students who might zone out over a worksheet will get into it when it's presented in a different format. Maze games are a great example of this. Maze games are really just like multiple choice questions that are presented as a series of boxes and paths for students to make their way through to the end and escape the maze. It's a really simple shift, but it makes a big difference in student engagement. We're going to look at maze activities and how you can use them in your Spanish classes. I'll share what they are, how they work, 10 ways you can use them, and of course, one that you can snag to use and try for yourself with your own students. So like I was saying earlier, maze games are basically like taking multiple choice questions and rearranging them so students have to choose their answer, and as they're choosing their answer, it leads them to the next question along the worksheet. It's great because it gives students feedback while they are working on the activity. I also usually create the mazes with purposeful dead ends. And what I mean by this is sometimes they're going through the maze and they get to a box on the maze and they're like, well, none of those are the right answer and I know they're not. It's because somewhere over here you made a mistake. So then they have to retrace their steps and look at their answers again, right? It's giving them that feedback as they're working. Also, if they answer 2 questions and all of a sudden they're at the end of the maze, they're going, wait a second, that's not right. No, it's not. Go try again. So that's kind of nice to give that student the instant feedback as they are working through an assignment, rather than going through just a whole sheet of questions and not knowing, hey, you were doing this wrong the whole time. Plus, the entire format of the page makes it feel like a game to them, which is, good for engagement. Let's look at 10 ways you can use maze games in your Spanish classes. Option 1, as a warm-up. Students can complete the maze individually as a warm-up or bell ringer. Maze games are designed for students to work independently, so if you need some time at the beginning of class just to take attendance, answer emails, put out fires, or talk to the kids who've been gone for 4 days, maze games are a nice option for that window of the class period. Students can complete a maze that is review, work on something that they've been practicing in class, or check up on an essential skill that they really needed to revisit before you build on it later in the class period. 2, as independent practice. This could be a chunk of your lesson. So maybe you've introduced a concept, you've done a few whole class activities, now you want them to work on it on their own. Maze game. Instead of simply completing a standard worksheet, they have kind of this added twist of feeling like they're solving a puzzle. This little twist can be incredibly motivating for your students. Option 3 are stations. I love stations. I've talked about them before on my channel. Mazes are a great option to include as a set of stations. They are print and go, which makes it really easy for you as you're trying to plan multiple different activities to use throughout the day. You can just grab a maze, print it, pop it in there, say, station, go. Also, if you don't want to make a ton of copies for your stations, you could print the maze and put them in one of those dry erase pockets, like the little transparent sleeves, and then give your students dry erase markers, and they're just going to do it and then erase it before they leave the station and leave the pockets behind for the next students. It's a great way to save on some copies, especially if you have a specific number of copies you're allowed to make throughout the year. Another great twist on the maze game is for students to play against each other in a race. You students work in pairs and they work to see who can be the first one through the maze. Important note, first one through the maze correctly. Kind of important. Option number 5 for ways to use maze games in your classes is small group critical thinking. One of the versions of the mazes have students explain their answers as they're making their way through the maze. You can have students do this in a small group and think out loud. So as they're answering the question and choosing the path, they can discuss their answers and explain why each one is the step that they're choosing. This is especially helpful for things like Predator versus Imperfect, where it can be a little difficult for students to decide which tense they're using. Have you ever done a maze game with your students? Comment below yes or no and let me know. Option 6, homework. I don't really give homework all that often in my classes. More what happens is they had time at the end of class, they were supposed to do an activity, and if they didn't quite finish, it becomes homework. However, I know some people are still required to give homework. Maze games are a great option for that. Personally, I think the best kind of homework is the kind that's self-correcting. Maze games are super easy to check because you can have them use bright colors to draw their path through the maze, and then you can just glance over and see, whoop, 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 yep, done. Kind of along those same lines, maze games are a really great option for a formative assessment, whether this is done in class or out of class. up to you. They offer a clear visual assessment for teachers to know who is understanding the skill and who needs a little bit more work. I often remind students that if they zipped through to the end of the maze after only 2 or 3 boxes, they probably did something wrong and need to go back and look and see, okay, where did I make a mistake? Option 8 for using maze games are as a fast finisher. Since maze games are really no prep, print and go, or post and go for your students, it's really nice to just have them on hand for throughout a unit, so that way if you get to the end of class and you're going, uh-oh, I still have 10 minutes left of class and I did not plan for this, you can just go to your file cabinet and be like, ta-da, activity. This was planned the whole time, I promise. We've all been there, right? They're also great for those awkward schedule days where there's like a pep rally or an assembly or a fire drill happened, or, you know, any of those kinds of things. Any of those kinds of days where you don't quite have time for a full lesson, but you still want students to be productive. Option 9 are print and go sub-plans. These are great to add for sub-plans because they don't require really any explanation. The sub can just hand them the sheet of paper and say, here you go, this is what you're doing today. Easy. Definitely use maze games as part of your go-to sub-plans from now on. Option 10 is to use maze games as differentiated practice. All of my mazes include 2 versions for each of the mazes, so there's really 4 practice activities. Option A and B for maze 1, option A and B for maze 2. One version, they simply find their way through the maze. The other version asks them to explain each step. And this might be, well, it can't be that step because the ending doesn't match, or it could be, well, I see it's this step because of X, Y, or Z. Just helping them to encourage and really think their thoughts out loud. It's kind of a show your work sort of step. It's a really great option for differentiation, so you want to include those different levels for your students. You might be able to tell I love these games. They're great for the classroom, great for students, and great for teachers. If you want to be able to easily make your own maze games, check out my editable template. I will make sure to link to it in the description of the video below, but basically what it is it's a set of Google Slides where all of those boxes and paths are already created for you. All you have to do is click and type in. And if you want a free game to try out with your own students, check the description below. It's set up to practice ir and la ciudad with your students, so you can either save it and use it in that unit, or download it and add it to your files for whenever you get to that unit, or you could just download it, open it up, and see how the maze game is set up. Again, I'll make sure to link to the free maze game in the description of this video below, so make sure you go click and check that out so you can use it with your own students. Phew, that is a lot of ideas to try out. Which one is your favorite, or which one do you think you'll try first? Comment below and let me know which way you think you might use maze games with your classes. I know personally my favorite way to use maze games are as a fast finisher after we're done using Corre and Círculos as a review game activity. So Corre and Círculos, very often students tend to finish at all different times because they kind of work at different speeds. Some students like to race through it, and some students really take their time while they're playing the scavenger hunt activity. So it's nice to have something that's just printed off and ready for them to go. They turn in their Corre and Círculo sheet and they grab the maze, and then they find a seat and they get to work. It's really nice because it's independent, or they can sit and work with their partner and I hear them like talking about their ways through the maze together. Either one is fine with me. It's just kind of a chill work through extra practice activity after they finished Corre. If you've never tried Corre and Círculos, it's probably my favorite review game, and I have a ton of videos where I explain how to use it and different ideas for you to use it in your classroom. I'll make sure to link that playlist for you here on the screen so that way you can check it out and see, hey, maybe it's going to be your new favorite too. All right, I'll see you in the next one.